Maybe before we get started, we could just do a little bit of context here. I think of left brain and right brain as two different hemispheres in my head. Left brain thinkers are typically analytical, logical, sequential. Right brain, and Sage used these exact words in his presentation, synthesizing, whole parts, random. I'm going to ask you now to self-identify. How many of you in the audience are left brain thinkers? Couple. Okay. All right, so let's call it 5 or so. The rest, right brain, I assume? Oh, wait, we got 2 brains over here. That's a big brain. Okay.
I'm a min.
Interesting. Okay, good. So tonight's presentation is going to be very left brain oriented. It's going to be very analytical, and it's how B2B marketers are thinking or shifting their thinking from the way marketing used to be done to how it's being done through marketing automation. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of context leading into that. The other context that I wanted to give you is maybe just thinking about this audience a little bit. There are folks that are clients of Cloudberry or potential clients, and then the Cloudberry folks as a whole. For the potential clients or clients, you're probably wrestling with a lot of these same issues. We just mentioned Eloqua and Salesforce as an example, and we'll dig into that. For those that are maybe with Cloudberry, what's really important to take away from this is where you fit in the context of the conversation. So some of this stuff you'll look at and you'll be like, you'll tip your head and say, I really need that drink. But what's important is to understand where you fit in that big picture when this conversation's happening at your client. B2B marketers have shifted their thinking and they're beginning the process of connecting marketing investment to revenue. And this represents a funnel. Paul had said in his presentation that a lot of the B2B marketers think about leads. And leads are really represented at the top end of the funnel. Marketers now have the ability to actually track and trend that performance all the way through the funnel to the time that a customer or a prospective customer shows interest in your business to the time that they actually close. And it's facilitated now through something called marketing automation, which I'm going to dig into in great detail. A lot of words on this slide, but this is an executive viewpoint of what marketing automation does. Going back to the how did you categorize the management there? The slow management or the not really up to speed? The CEOs, the heads of sales, all they care about is more revenue at lower cost. And that's what marketing automation's promise is. You can deliver a lot more revenue at a lot less cost. Now, how you actually do that is through these bullets here. So marketing automation is actually enabling a sales team to be more productive. So instead of focusing on a body of work, all these leads from marketing, they're only focused on the highest quality leads to close. All the other leads, marketing has the ability to kind of keep in touch with. And we'll dig into that in a little bit. Marketing can actually predict what revenue they're going to generate. That's a new thought. 5 or 10 years ago, marketing really couldn't predict anything in terms of revenue or output or accountability. Now, there are tools that give them the ability to make that prediction. Nurturing leads, meaning keeping in touch. How many of you get messages from your airlines, like a JetBlue or Southwest Airlines, that say, did you know that we've just opened up a new airport or a new route? You can fly from Newark down to the Bahamas starting November 1st on JetBlue. JetBlue is keeping in touch with you on a regular basis. Every month they're sending you an email saying, did you know? Did you know? You may not have any interest whatsoever in buying that, but they're keeping in front of you on a regular basis, and that's the essence of lead nurturing. The last two are really all about the ROI. Now, for the first time, marketing is really accountable. So the conversations that are happening at an executive level are ones of saying, hey, I'm making this investment in marketing. How do I know it's paying off? Do I spend $1 in marketing or do I spend it in sales? The automation element facilitates that calculation. My mom's a retired art teacher and a graphics designer. I did not get that gene in this family. That's the extent of my graphics ability right here. But this is a very, very, very important slide that tees up the entire context of marketing automation and what it does. A lot of companies think, oh, I buy automation and I've arrived. You know, it's technology. It's a light switch. Flip it on and away we go. But in fact, there are 3 fundamental pillars that if any one of these legs of the stool is missing, the stool doesn't stand up. It wobbles, it falls over, and you won't get the ROI. You won't get the effective revenue that you want to generate. And I'm going to walk you briefly through each 3 of these. The first one being content, and for the Cloudberry folks is very, very important. The second being data, and then third being the process. This is just a word cloud of content marketing, but what becomes really important with marketing automation is really getting specific content for the user's experience. What that means to a business-to-business marketer is you really have to segment your audience and know what that audience wants content-wise, what's relevant to you. Going back to the JetBlue conversation that we were just talking about just a moment ago. If I get an email that says I can fly out of Boston to San Francisco, I really don't care. I'm in Newark, New Jersey. You know, I fly out of Newark. Why do I care about the Boston routes? So the relevance of that content has to be very specific to that end user's need. And with these systems, there's a whole new, it's like feeding an animal or a beast. You buy the beast, which is marketing automation. You now have to feed a lot of content into it to make it effective. And so that's why having content, whether it be blogs, user-generated content, webcasts, ebooks, anything that can be repurposed or purposed toward your prospects becomes really, really valuable in this journey of marketing automation. This is in 3 font for those in the back, but I'll give you an explicit example of a current client of mine. 60% of their database, 300,000 records of a database, 60% of their database is bad, okay? I don't have to be a math major here, but let's figure this out. I run a marketing campaign against a database that has 60% bad data, meaning no email addresses, not in the target, may not have the right role. You know right out of the gate that your performance is not going to be all that high, right? Because right off the bat, you're underwater. 60% of your contacts aren't any good. How can you as a marketer be accountable for that type of an approach? So what we did here was I actually looked at their productivity of sales and marketing. And in this case, they were losing $1 million of productivity on their people's time, not to mention the lost revenue opportunity. So while a salesperson is busy poking at bad data, trying to call up Joe at a company that no longer exists, they're spending their time and energy doing that. That's an opportunity cost to get new revenue in. So a fundamental piece is really understanding your data and data quality. Again, that's probably not something that, you know, on the creative side that you give much thought to, but a very important piece to the marketing automation. I worked for a former division of GE. I had 2 master black belts, 6 Sigma. My head hurts when people talk about process. But what I really learned from that experience was how important process is for businesses that scale. And in marketing automation, process is the key element to make sure that leads that start off maybe on the website, that come to the website and express interest, are actually followed up and converted into revenue. So there are a lot of handoff processes that have to exist between a business-to-business marketer and a business-to-business salesperson. A lot of rules of engagement. A good example of this would be if a marketer had a lead, passed it over to the sales team, and the sales team said, I talked to that person, but they're just not ready to buy. That's a perfect opportunity to put them into what's called a nurturing stream, into a not now, maybe later nurturing stream. So content is sent out on a regular basis. You're always keeping in touch with that prospect once a month, once every 2 months. You're actively engaging that prospect. Even if they're not interested in buying, you're still keeping in front of them and keeping relevant. And that's what marketing automation enables companies to do. A lot of process piece behind this. Very important as part of the third part of the leg. All right, so let's depart for a second. I've shared with you kind of the big picture of what marketing automation does at the high level, brings more revenue in, increases productivity. Now, my personal journey as a head of marketing when I went through this was a very interesting one. As I went through, I felt like I was the little kid. I was going to the vendor community. The vendors were promising the moon in terms of capabilities. I signed up for all these capabilities. My team members were not geared for it. I wasn't geared for it. And we couldn't execute. And that was a big problem. And when I say we couldn't execute to the capabilities that were outlined as part of the technology. The technology actually outstripped the abilities of the people, which is a really interesting challenge. So I really went to school on this whole area very aggressively to kind of figure out what was happening within the community. And typically what I found was an ecosystem of lots of companies that have emerged. How many of you have heard of Salesforce.com as an example? So a good percentage of you. A CRM system or customer relationship management. That's really the backbone of the system. So I start here with the CRM systems. What I learned going through this process, which was very common to a lot of companies, is they started their journey by buying technology first and then figuring out, well, how does this support my business objective? Very few companies really defined what the business objective was up front and then found out what the technologies were to map behind it. And depending on the combinations that one chooses here, you can have a very different experience and a different outcome. So Broadridge mentioned Salesforce and Eloqua. I have personally implemented Eloqua in a couple of my companies and in my clients as well. In my experience, what I found as an example, they're very resource intensive. It's a very difficult tool to use, but when you get it to work, it can do all sorts of things. It can do the JetBlue thing, and it can do all these fancy, schmancy marketing campaigns. Very, very robust. So it's a really interesting place in the market right now. The other thing that I've seen, too, is Salesforce.com is about 10 years old, so it's been around for a while. The marketing automation players, probably about seven years the industry has been around, but it's really starting to hit a stride. Just like Salesforce was a decade ago, a lot of people are kind of fumbling around with its application and how to get it productive. People are at the same learning point with the marketing automation. They're kind of fumbling around, trying to figure out how to make it productive. So very few companies have actually crossed that chasm of making it productive, but probably in the next year or two, it'll be very different in terms of the productivity experience. So that's pretty much it. In terms of marketing automation, the big picture is it drives more revenue at a lower cost, and there are some really critical elements that you have to consider as part of it. The first being content, thinking about your user, what content's relevant to them, taking a look at your data and really scrubbing it, so when you're running campaigns, they're going to be effective, and then the processes, really defining what it is that you want to do. When you have all those elements against the backdrop of a business objective, that's really the first thing you ought to start with, is to launch off on a business objective to get the right software combination to then support these other elements. It's an exciting business. It's new.
Nice.